Sam, you have an interesting take on Black history.
Okay.
Tell me about your thoughts around the slave trade.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share part of my family history and what we've learned from our side of the transatlantic slave trade, which is a very painful period for most people in the world. And I'll start by saying that I intentionally traveled to the Caribbean and I did some island hopping, and I wanted to actually see the other side because it wasn't good enough for me to see the Caribbean in London or the Caribbean in America. I wanted to see the Caribbean in the Caribbeans. So for that reason I went to Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana. So it's 4 island hopped, 4 islands there. And I'll never forget the people, the faces, the looks. And before I even start this, I could literally swear blind when I saw so many people that we were just down the road in Nigeria, because the facial resemblance was so, it was a no-brainer. It was like, this is, you look like that, you know, it was that obvious to me.
You went to Antigua as well, didn't you?
Yes, Antigua,
Yeah.
yes, sorry. And when I was in Kingston, all right, and I'm going to make this really clear, Kingston 10. So people from Kingston know I was in Kingston 10. I went up Jacks Hill and Chelsea in Kingston 10. I remember there was an afternoon I sat down having a cold drink, and this guy just walked past. And when he walked past, I could almost literally just swear this guy's name was Musa, because he looked like a typical northern Nigeria, someone from Kaduna or Kano State, tall, very slim, very black. This is a typical Hausa man. When he opened his mouth and started to speak, I was still shocked, as in, how can this guy with this look speak like this? And years later, I remember when I saw Usain Bolt, I smiled. I thought, this is what I meant. As in, Usain Bolt is a bit bulked up, but a slim Usain Bolt is a typical northern Nigerian. Any day on any roadside, that's exactly how they look. And when I went to it was Trinidad and Tobago, it was so emotional, because I remember I was in the back of a car and I looked out and I saw these women, and I could almost swear that these were my mother's cousins. Every single facial resemblance was exactly like my mom's cousins. The only betrayal was when they spoke and the accents were so different. And you know, in my heart I knew that these are my people just on the other side. They're my people on the other side. So moving forward, that said, the question really was about my own perception, and I want to share a very important narrative that I know from verbal history and from books as well. And it goes like this. It's really about the alignment of Africa and the Caribbeans, and why so many Caribbeans often say that they're kings and that they're priests and they're kings in Jamaica and across the Caribbeans. And largely so, a lot of that is very, very true. And I want to just delve into that. So it is a normal thing for a king to have 2, 3, 4, 5 wives. And just imagine this for a moment. A king has a wife, a first wife, and she has a girl, and he has another girl child. Immediately the family say, marry someone else so you can have a boy. And then he marries this other person, and then she has a boy. And then the first wife later on has a son. So he has a first son from a second or third wife, and a second son from the first wife, right? And ultimately there's some power tussle, not necessarily between the boys initially, but sometimes you have to accept it between the mothers, as in whose son is going to sit on the throne, because whoever's son sits on the throne, the mother tends to wield some more power. So just imagine this. A first son from a second or third wife, a second son from a first wife, and then here come some Europeans, and they're masters of divide and rule. And then they come and say, well, you know what? Second son or first son, according to what's going on here, it looks like you are not going to get this title because the first wife is going to make sure her son gets on it. And you think it should be your son. Suppose we help you to get on the throne. What would you give us in return? And they're like, wow, what do you want? So, well, all we want is a passage of rights. Meaning, you see that village down the road, the ones that you hate, those people that always fight you. Suppose we go there and we're able to take all those people away by force. How would you feel? And he's like, well, if you're going to make me king, I don't like those people anyway. Yeah, I agree. Help me become king. And then you can get rid of my enemies down the road. And while you're at it, see my brother, the one that is meant to rightfully be the king, you can get rid of him as well. Done deal. Then these people give alms to certain people and let them know where to lay way and say, well, when he's coming this way, just attack him there and he'll be gone. And lo and behold, they attack, they win. By this time, obviously, the king, the original king, has passed away, and there's a decision between who's going to become next. This brother or the other one. King's gone, two brothers. One is supported by the Europeans. He becomes the next king. He's royal anyway, so people have to bow to him. But then the condition is that the Europeans now have a right to walk through that town to the other town, take all those people as slaves, because this king doesn't like them. And at the same time, the brother who would tussle with him, take him as well. And the whole lot of them leave the shores and end up in the Caribbean waterfront, the Caribbeans. And this is where the story of, the West Indies is filled with kings and descendants of kings. This is where it's accurate. A number of rightful kings were disposed. So I can hear people say, blood clot Africa. No, hold on. There ain't no blood clot here. Listen, this is what happens even to today in your family. When people realize that, well, if one person can support against the other, they tend to be a bit more selfish, with a bit of a selfish mother, selfish son. They just gang up and they go for it. And sadly, this happened time and time again across Africa. And I also let you know that most of the time, when people were forcefully taken from Africa, they weren't taken with locks on their mouths and whipped down the road like they show in the films. Most of the time, they were tied up, and the story told was that they were going to be slaves. And in African society, slavery is normal, right? But slavery doesn't mean a lock on your mouth, whip, and sleep outside. Slavery means you have to go to somebody else's household for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years and work for them, so that for example, the 10 bags of rice and, for example, the 10 cows that were given to your parents, you have worked it off. 3 years of slavery, and that's it. So it was a normal thing. It wasn't like this is some outrageous thing that's never been heard of before. No. It was normal. The only thing that people were not aware of was the extremity of what was going on in the Caribbeans. And also I need to point out that it got to a point that some of the local gods called Ifa, people were having dreams, right? And they were having dreams, and the dreams, they were like, these people that have gone, that in their dreams that they're screaming, they're crying, and they would wake up in the morning and tell the king that there's something wrong, they've had bad dreams. And then sooner or later the king would be, well, you see those guys that have gone, that you took away, bring some of them back, because we want to hear what's going on. And obviously Europeans were like, yeah, we'll bring them back 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and bring them back. Hey, where are they? And it got to a time that don't bring back no one. So when the king started to say, hold on, if you don't bring some people back for us to hear from, no more. And the moment African kings started to say no more, whether it was a good brother or a bad brother, that's when the invasion of African happened. That's when they brought the gunships from the waterfront and started to fire. And you see, and some of this stuff is in books, and you have to realize that one of the most powerful deities in Africa is Shango, and Shango fires out fire from his mouth, or from his hand. Fire comes out. So that's Shango, god of lightning. So I remember being told the story that when the Europeans came on their ships and they were on the waterfront, and people were like, well, let them come down, we're going to kill them. And they started to fire these cannons, and people saw the fire coming. They screamed that Shango, that is the god, was the one striking. And that was why half the people were terrified. They were like, the god has sided with these people, and he's firing out fire. And the people, a lot of them fled for their life because they didn't want to fight with a god. And that is how some of these towns were so easily taken.
So they thought the gunships was this...
Not the gunships. When you fire cannon and you see fire coming from behind it, that was the sign of Shango. So anywhere you see fire falling from the skies, it was said that was Shango. So when you see that fire coming from it, they just added 2 and 2, that's Shango. So people were half afraid that there's a god coming from them. So obviously there was a massive defeat, and and then once again when they came in, even from the history books, you realize that Europeans knew they couldn't directly rule because it would be too chaotic. So once again they went for the weaker vessels, the in quote the whatless brother to put in power, or to some person of no repute, and say, right, you become a chief because and you do our dirty dealings for us. And that is how divide and rule was imposed. So it wasn't as if everyone sat down and said, yeah, take them to the West Indies, we don't care. And I need that mindset to depart from people, because that's part of the whole divide and rule mindset. People thinking that, oh, these people hated you. No one hated you there. It was a divide and rule strategy that really, really worked. And even to today, as long as you have a divisive mentality, your mindset is divisive, you're going to keep on thinking the same thing. So my message here is simple. It's oneness, it's healing, it's restoration, and how you go forward, because we need much more united fronts to get to the next level. So that's my view. You want to talk to me, send me a message. I can dig out much more information for you, and you'll be pleasantly surprised by what I have to say. Just for record purposes, my first degree from university, I went to probably the best university in Nigeria, in Africa, University of Lagos. It's one of the top 20, I think, in the world, or I think it's top 3 in Africa, top 20 in the world. My first degree was in political science. So when you're studying political science, you need to study political structure, which is governance, which is history. So part of this is from what we studied at university level. So part of these stories are that, and part of them are because of where I'm from, which is I'm from Lagos Island. The island is where the ships of the Europeans came from. They didn't just appear in the hinterland, they had to come by ship. So the first contact they made were with the Lagosians. So when my grandmother was telling these stories, she was merely telling things that they saw or that her parents told her, and she repeated, and I remember. They specifically told us that this is how these people came, this is what they said, and this is what they believe. And my grandma, God bless her, I don't know what year she was born, but I remember that she died in the 1980s and she was over 80. So she was born in 18 something. So for her father to be telling her that, he was telling her in 18 something. So she was reflecting stories of the 18th to her grandfather, 17th century stories, but I recall some of them, and that's what I'm sharing with you on this recording today. Thank you.
That's fascinating, because this is an angle that we don't normally get. I mean, a lot of our history is from the Europeans' perspective.
This is, and you see, the bigger point is not just that it's from the European perspective, it is that it's being consumed. Yeah. That's the danger. It's not that European. I mean, if I was European, if you were European, you watching, you would tell the same sort of story. You would say, well, black people can't think, and that's what you would say to subdue them. So what has to happen is that you need to realize that you can't just accept everything that's been fed to you. You have to realize that you have your own you have your own thinking ability, and you need to think outside the box. You need to realize that no one does that, and just see the value in yourself, see the value in your community, see the value in your society, see the value in oneness, and excel. I'll give you 2 examples here. Why is the US, America, why is it called the United States of America? Why we have records of the Civil War, where America could have split the North and the South, and by no means would they have been a superpower. But the fact that they stayed united, and in that unity came that powerful country called the US. Look across Europe today. The whole vision behind the EU is the unity. China, 1 point something billion, unity. They're not the same people, but they've been put together. India. But as long as you keep on having this divisive thing, I'm from here, I'm from there, with division, there's never enough power. So if I need to, or if anyone needs to subdue a people, the first thing you do is try and divide them. Because once they're divided and they don't agree on anything, there can be no growth. That is the reflection. When you look across the black man, that's what's going on. Keep them divided. As long as they cannot agree, they cannot grow. So remember that every time you can't agree with your own people, you cannot grow. Every growth we've seen, the Roman Empire, every growth, Egyptians, there was unity. You remove the unity, there's chaos. What is absent from the black community is unity. Put it back in, the growth you're seeking, you find.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know what would be useful? To get perhaps a list of books that people can actually
I can take out time, yeah. In fact, on my bucket list of life, a time is coming that I want to take a year, 2 years out to just gather everything. I really, really want to put together a fund and gather everything and have it recorded. It's on my bucket list, and I hope that I do have the time and power to do that. I really want to do it. I really, that's part of who I am.
Yeah. And if people visit museums, say in Lagos, would they have some of this history there?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And once again, it's because people, you see, sadly, a lot of people don't value what they've got. They think, well, what is this? It's an old Nigerian, they just knock it down, let's build some flats and let's make some money. People's thinking is the mindset, they're not valuing. Whereas when you come across England, you get a church building that was built 400 years ago, it's listed, you can't touch it. Yes. They're preserving their history. Yeah. Africans, you're not seeing it. So you need people to see, but I'm seeing it. Dawn is interviewing me, she's seeing it, and there's more people that will see it. And the more we are, there will be a change.